many of us are walking into 2026, and it would be so helpful to have any visibility on revenue. The reality is like too many of us, like when we think about a revenue projection, we think we have to predict the future. Like as it like there's some magic, way of just looking into a crystal ball and knowing for sure you're going to get X amount of revenue. And reality is that's not true. Um, Unfortunately, many of us would appreciate that, especially if there's a downturn. I want to know it sooner than later so I can start planning on something and not overspending. But many of us also, like without planning, miss the opportunity for the upswing. Things that feel familiar as humans, we are driven towards those. So things that look the same and act the same, we are often driven towards that. And it's the things that we're not familiar with that we often don't focus on and create opportunities for. So the opportunity I want to put before us, and the reason I want to show you a bingo card, is to give you a sense of some visibility on what the opportunities are. And then hopefully that just hits a trigger in your mind to look for one or two or three new things this year. And then that's how growth happens. It might not all come in one year. Sometimes you have to kind of compile the efforts over a few months. It takes you, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months to kind of actually realize something, but it won't ever come unless you have a clear target what you're going for. So I thought I would show you guys the bingo card today, and then really kind of talk about what it's like to be in the position we are, where we have to depend on, what feels like luck to get projects sometimes, and see if we can't turn some of that lucky feeling into like a skill feeling along the way. And again, I'll do the best I can. Joe actually has a few other things that he has kind of pumped into this pipeline, and then maybe the next couple of weeks we can have Joe kind of catch up where I've left off today, and kind of talk about some of those other efforts that he's doing with his small group and his clients that many of you can benefit from as well. Okay, so does that sound cool? If you guys want to give me anything else to throw into this agenda, I'd be happy to kind of add that to it as well. But that's my thought for, and I thought it'd be helpful for you guys as we kick off this year. All right, so let's talk about some like three areas that we often fall into, like problem areas that we fall into when we're thinking about revenue goals. And I'll talk about it from being a solo business owner, like many of you are. And some of you have a sales team or like a sales rep or something that you're working with. And I want this process to be relevant regardless. If you have a staff person that's doing sales for you, a rep that's doing it for you, or you're doing it yourself, all of this is true. And the first part is the first kind of issue that I want to talk about is what I call fuzzy goals. This is especially relevant when you're working with other team members, that you have to be really clear on what the goals are. But if we're honest, if we have fuzzy goals as a business owner, we also realize, as not to pick on Trista, but like, you get out of your sweatpants a little bit slower, to be honest, sometimes when it comes to things that you don't like to do. And sales is often something that we don't like in a way. And I think we don't like it because it's never really solved. It's not like a one-time solution to get it done. So that constant management is something that it's not our favorite. Okay, so fuzzy goals. Fuzzy goals sound like this. We want to grow. And then that's the goal. The idea of like just growth, unmeasurable, not understood, or not really, really clear, to keep it fuzzy doesn't really give you an understanding of what effort or what direction or something specific you could do to convert it. So what I want to do through any efforts that I'm working on is turn something fuzzy, like we want to grow, into some sense of, especially with my love language, some sense of math that we can do. Growth in what direction, or how many new things, or how much bigger can we get? My favorite. So it's not, I don't have to do more, but maybe I can ask for more with the same client. So it doesn't have to turn over a new leaf that way. So fuzzy goals is kind of one of the first things we kind of have to work against when we're doing sales projections, and revenue thoughts. Okay, the second one is this. It's this idea of like misaligned sales effort. It's a little bit different than fuzzy goals, but what this does is it gets the sense of our team or as an individual, we often chase what just shows up. So that's where we feel like I have to be lucky to get work, or I'm not really sure where work comes from. We have those kind of like thoughts. And so we say, well, but I always get something, right? I don't know where the work's going to come from for 2026, but I always get something. And that sense of like effort I could put into something and the return I would get from that is can be somewhat misaligned. And specifically because you get a sense of satisfaction when something shows up. So you can say, well, I must be doing good enough because things always show up. So I'll just repeat the actions I've done before. And in reality, there are some very, if you can find and think of a specific target and you can put effort towards that target, you will get measurable results from the efforts you put into it. Some of the issue we have is that we often think of sales as everybody, everywhere, all the time. So, because what we're saying to ourselves is sales can come from anywhere. So, if it can come from anywhere, it must be everywhere. And that to me is like one of the worst things we can do to ourselves. If we could just say, like, I don't have to be clear, anybody, I might have to go to this meeting, I might have to make that phone call, I might have to follow up with every LinkedIn chat that someone gives me. I must post all the time, and we're putting all this effort into it with nothing specific. Then we get a little bit of growth or a little bit of something, and we align it to the effort we put into it, and that could be misaligned, and it just creates chaos. And to be honest, I think that's where our burnout comes from most, is this misaligned effort. So that's the second thing I want to conquer for you. So fuzzy goals, meaning we're not really clear on what growth would mean or what effort would mean. The second one is not understanding the effort we could put into it and get specific results. We just put into lots of effort and get it from anywhere. So therefore, it must all be good. And I think there's a fear base to that of like, but what if I didn't, Tim? And that person might be around that corner, and I didn't go around the corner, I might kick myself. And I'm like, that's such a curse that we put on ourselves and lie that we put on ourselves to do that way. So those are the two I most believe in. The last one is something that is kind of specific that the bingo card can solve. And I'll say the terminology I put there is I'm calling it false confidence. And most specifically, I think that you could see, or maybe even just like hidden risk might be another way of thinking about this. And the idea there is that if we actually planned something out, if I sit down and make you fill out where you think your money is going to come from and how much effort you would put into it, the reality is that you might find out you're relying on too many small projects, too much. You're relying on things that take very little effort to get a return from it. Or you're thinking of one big heroic effort to get something done. And I don't want you to just focus on the easy, soft stuff. I want you to be able to have a sales goal and achieve something different. Also, I don't want you to think that it has to be one big, gigantic, heroic thing that you have to get to. If you just step up one level, you can get major returns. And a step up is more of a relationship-based conversation that we can talk about. So those are the three things that if I want to solve this problem for you, I would think of those as the problems and things I want to solve by accomplishing that. Anybody else have any other like twisted lies and things that you are afraid of, or scary frustrations that you deal with every year when you're thinking about revenue projection or working with your sales team and giving them direction? Someone just turned their camera off, so that means they're like, I don't want to answer that question, and they just jumped off as soon as I said that. That was probably Dave. You don't have to, but I was as I brainstorm things. Oh yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, some question I had. Oh, yeah, some question I have is like if I set out to have like a massive goal, let's say 2 million visits with like 50% growth, 50% profit, um, and I have like one employee, like I get share of sharing that number, and because they will know that they're getting paid like minimum amount, and I'm making tons of profit.
Oh yeah. I know it is kind of a funny feeling. It's like it's not guilt, but there is somewhat of a like, is it shame? Is it like and a feeling that I don't deserve that, or if someone found out that I am trying to push my company or become more profitable, somehow I got greedy in this process and are asking for something I don't deserve. Um, it is kind of a interesting thing, isn't it, Phil? That we do have that filter. Even worse, I feel even worse for you and Dave specifically, because I find that Canadians and Australians have that tall poppy syndrome or whatever that feeling is, even worse than Americans. Americans, we're known for being ambitious and we can like, tout our horns and be greedy, and the world accepts us that way. But there's something cultural even around you where that if you were talking to your other buddies, corporate buddies in your country specifically, it almost has even a bigger kind of shameful quality to it, doesn't it? Yeah. I
So
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, what's the solution for that? It's just like to pay them more or to make less profit or not share those numbers.
I mean, if you want a quick solution, yeah, don't share the numbers. I mean, that's fine. But I think that that's not actually solving the problem. Um, there's a couple of things I want you to know. One is profit is very necessary. So in a way, like if it's other business owners, you can even lead an effort and explain why and how profit is necessary just for security for your company, right? So profit doesn't necessarily mean you're pocketing it and buying a Lamborghini. Profit just means that you're storing up capital so you can use it later, keep your employees around longer, take on different efforts or explore creative, avenues. That's all helpful, useful thing that you can work with profit. So you might be able to just convert it from the word profit to some other effort you want to put into it. So you say, I'm going to hold back money from a project in order to put it into a creative research and development project. So you convert the profit as you explain it to other people so they don't think it's just you and money grabbing. But I also don't want you to be afraid of profit. Profit is very necessary. You collecting money and holding on to it for your long-term security, your retirement, those things are also very necessary parts of being an entrepreneur. And we can't give away that money. So I want to say very easily, I give you permission to do it. There is no shame. And I wish that would be enough just to rid you of the shame, but there is no shame in making profit. There isn't. But I would be maybe the easiest trick is to not say it, or when you say it, it's already converted. That might be the easier way. So people are supporting you in the making of that profit instead of what feels ambiguous. It's harder to support you regardless. But that's a good question. Yeah. Okay, who here has worked with a bingo card or uses a bingo card or even know what I mean by bingo card? Yeah, Ollie, you do. Tristan, you do. Oh, Dave, you do. Great. And Phil, you've seen these before too. I'm pretty sure you have a copy of every one for the last 5 years in your database. Great. So as I explain this stuff, if you guys use the bingo card and you have specific questions about how you use it, please throw it out here so the others can kind of hear what it's like to work with it, and let's solve any problems. But also support me if I say something or you want to add something in addition to what I'm talking about. I'd love to hear your input too, because if you're finding it useful or you're finding issues with it, I'd love to hear either one so we can kind of walk through the pluses and minuses of a process this way. I chose the term bingo card. I was actually working with a guy out of Toronto years ago. Like this is early RevThink in a way. And I was trying to explain like why he needed to specifically give his salesperson a goal. And when back then, I was probably somewhat naive myself, and I would always think of a sales goal as a total number amount. So I might say to my salesperson, hey, I want you to have $1 million goal this year. As if $1 million goal was the only direction that person needed. So working with them, I did like a on-site with them over a couple of days. And I kept trying to come back to the same problem of like, why is it so hard for you to feel comfortable with $1 million sales goal, for example? And then I realized what it was is it's hard to identify the project you would go after or the client you would go after to equal $1 million. Because there isn't in many of your cases, there isn't one project and one client that gives you $1 million right away. There are often, it comes in, large and small volumes that feel somewhat uncontrolled. But then I realized if I ask something specific, like give me the name of a client, people also freeze up. The first thing, literally the first thing I often get from a salesperson is like, well, I can't guarantee they're going to give us that money next year. And I think in the back of my mind, aren't we all adults? Of course you can't guarantee it. I'm not asking you to predict the future. I just simply want to know, like, if you had to guess, if you had some sense of a benchmark, can you give it to me? But there's like this extra trigger, like extra pressure, like you're supposed to be exactly correct in doing this. And I wanted to get rid of that. So I built this system in order to kind of just capture big picture thinking, but in small enough bites that make sense. And so that's what I've called a bingo card. Here's how I'm gonna share it with you guys right now on screen here. This is what a bingo card looks like. You can see it has rows and columns to it. I will give you the link for this. It's actually pretty easy. If you've been around for a while, all of our links are about the same. It's always revthink.live, and this one is revthink.live/bingo. And this is a Google Sheet. When you go to this link, it will pop up a screen in Google Sheets, and it'll ask you to make a copy. And that way you can download to your own system. So feel free to grab that and kind of look at it, play with it as I go through it here. The bingo card starts with really a big picture perspective of where your sales currently come from. You'll see in the sheet I'm giving you, this is the exact copy of the sheet I'm giving you. There's a blank version, so a template for you. And then there's an example. So each of these tabs have like project awards, blank, and then an example of project awards. So you can kind of see that's how the sheet is structured. It starts with this just by asking, like, what was last year's revenue by client? Many of you using QuickBooks know you can do this report automatically. I believe the report we generated gives us these two columns here, the client and their annual revenue. And then in this third column here, I just made this column a percentage of the total annual revenue. So you can see here in this example, Amazon. Oh yeah, so it's popping up these messages here. But so like Google here is 197,000, which is 9% of the annual revenue, this $2 million in annual revenue, and so on. I kind of see that I just went across each that way. What this does for me immediately is just give me the first sense of visibility of where our money often comes from, the size of the clients, and then therefore eventually the number of projects those clients give us. But if you have seen any of our other work, or if you want to look back on some other videos we made, we have this like 80-20, 90-10 kind of visibility on things too. And the reason why I put this percentages is because it's really interesting. If I were to highlight everything here in the green, for example, you can see this is about 80% of the revenue of the company, just these projects here. And the total number of projects is 11. So out of 11 projects gives us 80% of the revenue of the company, or 11 clients gives us 80% of the revenue for company. The total clients, look at this thing, going all the way down to here, there are 40 clients. So in other words, 25% of the clients generate 80% of the revenue of the company. So one of the first things I recognize when I do this report is just how many, and I don't mean worthless like they're worthless. I mean that they're worth less, clients that are not worth as much of the effort we put into it. And many of us will take all clients from everywhere. This is that like misaligned effort kind of thought where we're willing to accept anything that just comes our way. And in doing that, we often are doing projects or managing clients that just really are not going to get us the return that we want to. But if we were to focus on just these 11 clients that already give us this work, or maybe 15 clients that give us a certain amount of work, We could honestly get the majority of the money that we work with, and with many of these, just think about like upgrading this Home Depot client from a $40,000 a year client to an $80,000 a year client, or even $60,000 a year client. Just a little bit of upgrade within the top few clients that you have, the top 10, 20% of the clients that you have, could already get you that return on effort goals sooner than later. So this is just a really kind of that down and dirty analysis of like where your money already comes from and how much effort you're putting into what often feels like everybody everywhere really kind of burns you out. And you definitely don't need to invest in an effort in relationships that only lead to small amounts over the year. You're better off getting this amount from an existing bigger client and reducing the effort your team has to put into kind of winning projects and winning clients, week after week, month after month. So that's the very first tab you're seeing here is this annual tab, annual revenue sales tab. Anybody have any insights or thoughts or have used that and gained any strategy that they saw success with?
Can I just ask a question? You were saying that, the ones that at the tail end, probably don't put as much effort into, because but wouldn't they also be a good feeder for, you already have that relationship to try and push them up into the green section?
Yes.
Isn't there a little bit of that as well?
Dave, that is true, but that strategy comes in two forms, right? So the first one is the successful one, where you recognize that this client, Disney at $16,000, Disney's a great client. Why would I ever say no to Disney, even though they give us $16,000, right? And you're like, you're absolutely right. And Disney could be successful and could be upgraded. In order to be successful, if that's a strategy you have, you would then focus on Disney in your these other scorecards we have, and make sure that we're making them into a $40,000 a year client. So you would have to put effort into it. The other side of that strategy is actually the lie. The lie that says, well, we better say yes to Disney. It could lead to something else. And we actually say yes to a whole bunch of crap that we actually never get the return on effort from. And I think some of that lack of return on effort is because we say yes to too many of these. So let's just say like I created a arbitrary policy that we don't accept projects $20,000 a year or less. And we're trying to get all clients to $40,000 a year or more as a client. So there are a few clients at $20,000 I'd have to double their revenue year over year. In this case, it might be another, how many clients is this? 10 more clients I would focus on. That's a really great, just like solid line and recognizing it, that we are not going to say yes to projects less than 16,000 or less than 20,000, even if it's Disney. That by itself just allows you to focus on Starbucks and not put effort into Disney that you can put into Starbucks and turning Starbucks into a 40. But because we're chasing Bank of China and Costco and BMW at 4,000 because it's being, like all these other and these are all fake names, by the way, that kind of lie about them. But like the structure here is like, because we're saying yes to everything, we're actually not gaining where we want to. That's the big picture. So I do want you to kind of recognize the return on effort you could gain, but I also want you to recognize where you're spending too much energy on everyone and not putting it where you need to. Those of you who were in my small group last year around this time, we read a book called Exactly How to Sell. And in that book, the author had 3 categories of clients: silver, gold, and platinum. And in a lot of ways, silver, many of these are our silver clients. Silver clients are the clients that are known. They know us and we know them. And it takes very little sales effort to get something from them. The downside of a silver is that they already know us and it's hard to upsell them because they've already pigeonholed us into that category, and it's hard to move them to think of us differently. In a way, as you analyze that, Dave, and think about some of these lower clients, you have to tell yourself the truth. It would be nice to move Toyota, but Toyota really doesn't think of us that way. Starbucks could possibly, and start kind of being a more fine-tooth comb on who you're putting the effort into, because the possibility of moving them into a gold category. A gold category is a client that you could approach with a new idea and grow that client base. It's harder to get those clients, but when you do, there's better growth in it. So we need the silvers, but we also need to, we want to be focusing on our efforts onto the golds. So I hope that makes sense, but that's how I would definitely look at that and analyze that as you get into more detail. That's a great question. Okay, great. So that's kind of the first thing I do with my clients working with Bingo Card, is just want to see where their money comes from. A way of almost like just flushing out all those misperceptions about sales, that it's really, really hard or impossible, and kind of just have a sense of like, nope, we actually did it. Here's how we did it last year. And once I have that visibility, I have a comfort now with data. So I kind of like put that data flush out there and get some broad strokes out of it. The next couple of tabs here, I'll go to the examples. You can see I have it structured in a few different ways. The headers here are dollar amounts, and the column here, going down the column here, would be a category. So this one called project awards would be monthly, quarterly, and annually. And what I mean by that is you would put, if you're expecting to get one $25,000 project per month, you put a 1 here. If you put a 2 here, it would double that 25,000 to being $50,000 a month, every single month. Quarterly would mean like I'm expecting to get 4 quarterly, 4 projects at $40,000 per quarter, which is, a little bit more than 1 per month is kind of what the quarterly means. So you could put 2 here, meaning a little bit less than 1 a month. If you put 3, it's the same as monthly. And if you put 4, it's a little bit more than once a month. That's what quarterly is there for. And then annually is kind of thinking of like this biggest category, whatever the biggest category might be, of how many you're looking for in a year. And what I like to think of this is like to give me and my team direction, that I know these are harder to get and it's a longer term sales cycle, but we're looking for 3. So as the year goes on, I want you to not be putting 13 $50,000 projects. We only need 3. Let's not spend our effort and a lot of energy only focusing on this category and missing all of this that actually kind of pays other bills as well. So this structure of goals gives us a sense of that, in a way, silver, gold, and platinum view of work, and not putting all the effort into the biggest dog and kind of missing the day-to-day work, or vice versa, putting too much effort down here and not capturing, the opportunity for a big one. So this is us trying to capture that visibility and that project mix here on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis. Another version of this exact same bingo card is looking at it in this case of instead of putting quarterly, asking ourselves the question, like, our big clients, how much work do we get from them, or could we expect to get from them? So if I took my top, in this case, 6, but I can make this 10 or 12 clients, I can start breaking down some of my expectations for them. And I might be looking at, 3 $25,000 projects because they're easier. We often get a $75,000 project from Amazon, but this one right here, this is our goal, is to get $100,000 project from Amazon. And as I just plug in this kind of thing here, my brain starts to figure out, understanding the kind of effort I would need to put into it, who my relationships are, how that relationship might grow. And Dave, here's those categories where these are the lower tier clients, but I would want him, here's what I did last year, but knowing I want to get them to 45,000, I want to kind of expect 1 more project from each of these folks to get me to those numbers, something like that. This right here, 4 10s, by the way, is a $40,000 a year with that client. Adding 125, just think about that. In a 12-month period, adding one $25,000 project with one of your clients gets you them to 65,000. If I went back to my list here, 65,000, it gets you, now I'm getting like here, I have a lower tier client, and now I'm getting like right here, still in my top client level here. So this is just kind of looking visibly instead of just, number of number of projects without a client name, I can, if I can process this and work with my team for this, I can actually almost find the name or the person or the company I can go for. And now there's no mystery. Now it's not everyone. It's people's who we actually know their name and their email address and actually already work with them. I could go to them first and get some growth out of them. So that's what this second kind of bingo card allows me to do. You'll see what happens. I'll kind of use this one that is, let's see here. This one is, yeah, here. I'll clear this one out so you can see how this works. You can see what happens here is just so you know, the amount that's in this cell here, I didn't type the word 25K. I actually typed 25,000 as a number. And then I just formatted the number to look like 25K. So if you want to adjust these for your company and make it like 90,000, you have to type the whole $90,000 number in here and it turns it into 90K just as a simple format rule. So that's the first thing I want you to know. If you can easily change all this stuff and you can actually add rows and columns. Oops, I didn't get deleted a column. You can add columns. If you want to do that, just simply copy the column next to it over to the right as you do it, and then put whatever, category you want to put there. And then you can even move these columns from one to the other too, if you want to kind of mix it around. Anytime you work with a Google Sheet, if you don't know this already, it's good to kind of think of like bookends. So this column here and this column here are your bookends, and you can do whatever you want to between the bookends. But if you add something to the right of the bookend, often the formulas, these master formulas, don't work anymore. The formulas are kind of set up with a, from here to here, give me the total. And if you do something beyond that, it won't often work. So if you're messing with some of my sheets that I build for you, kind of just keep that in mind. What's happening here too is that as I type in a number here, so this is 1 at $10,000, gives me a $10,000 total, and I'm looking at the corporate total down here. So if I did 290s for this client and then 470s and so on, what I also like to look at is if I were to do it something like this, look at this kind of client makeup. This is a total amount of projects. So in this case, the total amount of projects needed right here is 13 projects. 13 projects, that's one project. That's a little bit more than one project a month. The project range being from 10,000, but mostly in the 60 to 70, $90,000 range, gets me almost $1 million. And I always find it interesting how quickly this adds up. If you are only hovering in these categories down here, and this is 10, and this is 15, and this is 20, and this is 22, and this is all small numbers. And I started plugging in 15 projects here like I did the other one. You'll see how fast things don't add up. Just kind of like pointing to like that same number of projects in this price range equals $200,000 a year. The same number of projects by getting this into higher levels, like, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, and so on. Put this 50. And then getting these categories of projects over here instead of there, we get closer to $1 million with literally the same number of emails and phone calls and project wins. So this is when I talk about, hey, we need to qualify our clients. If the clients we're working at are maxed out with us at $10,000 and $20,000 and $30,000 a year, we need to start reaching to clients and qualifying clients that are above that amount. And this is where I gain visibility and kind of that whole idea of the fuzzy goal of like growth doesn't necessarily mean more in the same category. Growth might mean I need to win 1, 2, or 3 clients that elevate me from a $20,000 a year maximum to $40,000 a year maximums or 60 or 80s. When we hit those problems, you're going to start asking me questions like, yeah, but Tim, how do I do that? How would I ask that client for more money? Or where would I find that client? But the fact that question pops up is the goal of this bingo card. I want you to map things out and recognize that you might not know how to do it. And then that's where some of your growth would come this year. We would work together. You'd be part of a small group. You join Joe's small group. Gosh, that's like a tongue twister for me today. Join Joe's small group and have the accountability part of his group that's on a week by week basis, keeping you going. So you feel like you're part of a team that's doing it, not an individual. Whatever those efforts are, we can find the right method to get you there. But if we're going to try to get to $1 million goal with a client, or $2 million or $4 million goal of revenue in a year, we need to start breaking this thing down and finding out where we don't play and how we can play in those new ways. So working with clients, I often are able to do that, like find the holes, find what's missing, and kind of get beat up and kind of like push the team that way. This last one is no different than the others. It just looks more complicated. What this is doing is kind of drilling down one step more. I'll zoom out a little bit and saying, imagine taking a bingo card per quarter. So this is really helpful when you're working with a salesperson or a sales team. You could say to them, hey, I want you to have quarterly goals. And the fun way this one works is you could see, like, I'm actually just putting in the word of the client instead of a number. So if I'm expecting 2 projects from Paramount of $75,000 in Q1, I just put Paramount in here twice. It counts it as the number 2, multiplies that times 75 and gets me 150K in that quarter. And then all these add up to 550. So this is me working with a sales team and saying, how many would you get from which client, and kind of work things that way. My clients that are hitting, like 8 million, 10 million, 15 million a year, we have to work in categories like this because they're doing something along the lines of like 30 to 50 projects at a time. But if we add up the clients, you'll still see those clients, even though they're working on multiple projects, the number of clients isn't hundreds of clients. They're still doing really a list of clients long enough you can read in an easy meeting. And you could say, hey, here's the studios we're working with, or here's the agencies we're working with. And a few of those agencies are going to give us repeat business and give us about, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 of work a year. And that's how those bigger agencies and bigger studios can see things. But specifically, they have a multiple sales team kind of effort. And so I give each one of those sales teams like smaller quarterly bingo cards with certain dollar amounts and see if they can't hit those goals that way. This is one more level of complexity. This is getting it to accountability. So we can see almost on a monthly basis, or hopefully even on a week by week basis, how much effort or how much return on effort we're getting in the direction we're going, and hopefully changing direction that so that people hit those goals sooner than later. So if I was a smaller studio, had one salesperson, and I could sit down with them, once a quarter, once a half a year, and ask them how's it going, and know how $1 million will add up. But if I'm looking at over $5 million, I need to be able to see things a little bit more broken down so I can see multiple efforts playing itself out and getting a sense of direction of like, well, Paramount's really not coming to us right now. The Warner Brothers deal is totally screwing them over, and we've been depending on them for X amount of work this year. Maybe we should go focus on that Disney client because Disney is thriving. Who's our competitor? What do we need to do? What effort can we put into getting new Disney work and letting go of Paramount work? Something like that. And different sales strategies can pop up because of that. So that's what this last kind of bingo card is allows for, like a different breakdown, a different structure. My encouragement to you is do whatever works for you. Like whichever one of these cards, or if you want to make up your own card, the way your brain works, great. I say go for it. The whole idea here is trying to get it out of your head, get it into a bingo card so we can start looking at that effort you're going to put into it and that return on effort to see how that plays itself out. And my goal for all of you is to get as much visibility for your goals out there so then you can measure against those goals. not beat someone up for not hitting it or beat yourself up if you're not hitting it, but just have a sense of what you thought and where it really is going so you can keep on kind of rethinking and repurposing your strategy as the year plays itself out. Okay, so that's how the bingo card works. Any questions or thoughts, or anybody modify a bingo card that worked differently? Wish Nico was here. Nico, I think, rebuilt his whole thing. And what's the one? Phil, you work in Notion, right? I think, what's he working? Coda or something? Yeah.
That's scary. Coda.
Yeah. Have you built this in Notion? One of these in Notion yet?
Well, I use the templates like that. I have like, one tab where I have all the templates and I keep them up to date week by week.
Okay, yeah. Because I would imagine you can connect like, almost these client names could come from a Notion database, right? And give you a solid number or sum or something like that. So if you guys have some of those more complicated systems, you can get this. This can still be an output from a more complicated system like Notion if you had that.
I think QuickBooks is the best for that type of things.
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah. It's like Notion sometimes, it's not exactly, it doesn't match QuickBooks. While QuickBooks is like, I send that to the government and everything has to be perfect. My accountant's on that. So I know I can trust it. While Notion is just like, sometimes the invoice has been sent on that day, but been paid like 2 months afterwards. So it's never super tight.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sometimes you guys know all my rules. I always do this in Google Sheets so you can see I'm not doing any magic tricks. I want you guys all to be able to have a worksheet you can build and change. So I try to keep it very simple. I also don't even know if it's worth the effort sometimes. Like some people put a lot of effort in rebuilding this just to find out they used it for 2 hours a year, or like, could you just use it for the 2 hours and then see it next year? You don't have to go too crazy in doing it. Okay, any other thoughts? Any other questions or?
Yeah, we use this. Me and Kate went to a little retreat in Park City before New Year, and we made like 2 versions of this. We made like dream version, of like what we want to do this year, and also break even version so we can keep the doors open.
Love it.
Which was really useful because when you're so stuck in the work and so on, the break even one was a big eye opener because we were like, okay, we have to make this money to keep everyone going, and also with the clients, what's actually worth our, and I'm not saying worth our time. It's just there's certain clients who you talk to a lot and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get this is a great relationship and so on like that. When you actually look at the time that you are spending talking to these people, and then you're actually like, wow, I could be focusing my energies in different areas. So it's just a big eye opener for us in that session. So yeah, I love this. It's great.
Yeah, and I know you have a salesperson that helps you so that you could. The problem there is that salesperson could keep on chasing and chasing something, thinking there's going to be effort. And sometimes you as a business owner need to say, hey, can you just go look somewhere else for a minute instead of thinking the one you have in the hand is better than the 2 in the bush? Like you probably need to spread out some energy. And it's interesting when you have this kind of visibility, how quickly you can make that decision. And you're like, wait a second, I need 4 of those. And you keep talking about 1 of those. You're not talking about enough.
Yeah.
So I want you to recognize you need to have a bigger pool that you're thinking about.
Exactly. And also like how much money you're spending on like travel, dinners, any little things, you might be losing money chasing that rabbit in a way. So yeah, it was very eye-opening for us just to see that because we could shift like you said. So yeah, really enjoyed using it.
Those are great points. Well, that's kind of the big piece. I know many of you kind of are probably building your revenue goals right now, trying to plug in just what the year looks like. My suggestion is, if you haven't already done it, make sure you go to get your last year's report as best as you can. Even look back 2 years. If you've been in business for 5, 6, 10 years, 12 years, there are clients out there you might have just forgot about. and they might still be around. Now, many of the clients that were around last year might not even be around anymore because of all the disruption that's taking place, but kind of do an audit of who is out there and then what kind of work you've done. And don't forget about past year's wins that you can replenish. It's interesting. One of my clients, we did this, and quite literally, she just like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about them, and she started writing emails. And the first 3 emails she wrote, she got projects from them, and it's just literally like forgot that they were there. So something as easy as that, it was like, wait a second, I actually know the names of the people I can get projects from instead of thinking I have to get on LinkedIn with a bunch of strangers. That's one of the kind of the bigger gifts that we can kind of put in front of you right now. I love the idea of the silver, gold, and platinum. If you want to grab that book or grab it on Amazon or Audible and just kind of relive that chapter of what that is, Phil K. Jones, something like that. Yeah, it was a Phil. I remember that because Phil was in my group, and I kept saying his name over and over again. But it's called Exactly How to Sell, and that one chapter is just so clarifying to get a sense of and have some filters for leads as they come in. That's really great. Also, just like the thought of this bingo card is looking at you might want to fill in the projects you had last year to the best of your ability, and see where, like a bingo card, like you might be missing squares, and kind of like fill in those squares like a bingo card. Like, you might have some categories and missing the 4th column. Like, recognize that and see what effort you have, especially if other clients see you doing $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 a year worth of work, and one client's keeping you at 40. Ask yourself the question, as almost like a case study. Why does this client understand to give us more, and why does this give us less? And study that and create a strategy to help some growth happen there. So see where the missing deals might be on the card. That might be an easy way to get started. And lastly, the real big thing is I want you to recognize that I want you to avoid any unrealistic volume assumptions. A lot of us, when we think about growth, we did 10 projects last year. Now we're going to do 20. 20 is not necessarily better than 10. Growth comes in different areas, especially if I could gain revenue with the same number of projects. That's always the goal. But at some point, if you start adding more projects, you're going to change your team dynamics, your team sizes, and you can't actually keep up with it. So growth strategy needs to come from multiple areas and not just make unrealistic volume games. Like, next year I'll do 100 projects. Like, don't promise that to yourself. Don't guess you're going to do that, because if you actually can't get that kind of sales return from effort, you're not actually going to hit those revenue goals. And you are looking for areas that you are weak in, areas that you don't understand, areas you need to gain from. Those are the kind of visibility we actually like from the bingo card, because then we can actually learn, understand something new, make some investments, and grow that way. So don't be afraid of letting this show some weakness. That is exactly what it's there for, so that you understand and can put some effort into some strength, to developing strength in those areas. That's kind of like my last big kind of push there. How'd I do? How'd I do without Joe? Is that okay? Thanks. I've been doing this for years. It's so fun when Joe grabs it and runs with it, and he has some kind of bigger accountability structures that I like what he was doing. So, like I said, in a couple of weeks, we'll bring Joe back in when everything's worked out with his family, and see if we can pick his brain too of what he's doing there. There are a couple of new things coming up. We are going to launch some small groups this year. We actually are going to develop a different kind of group structure. So keep your eye open for there. And we have this other thing that we did last year with a small group. I had 6 agencies in a group I called a core group. And with the core group, we did something different. Most of the stuff we focus on RevThink is like growth structured, how to grow revenue, how to grow people, that kind of stuff. But we don't focus a lot of enterprise value. So I took this core group through an enterprise value exercises over 12 months. I guess it was 14 months with them. Within 14 months, 2 agencies got sold in that time period. and one is going through a merger right now. So it's the thought process of like, what is the value of your business? How do you increase the value? What are some strategies worked around that? And then how do you think about the big picture thought? It's never too early to think that way, but we structured the core group specifically so that there was a lot of crossover and relevance into them. So if you're interested in joining a core group, we'd love to kind of get your name, get some understanding of who you are, and put you into a group that's relevant for you. In other words, you might be like early stage. It's too early to think about exiting, but there might be 6 or 7 people that would be really good to learn some of the elements and go through a group that way. And other groups, you're at the exit point and you actually want to make some deals sooner than later. So it'd be great for you to be with other peers in that same position, so you're learning together that process. That does not those do not replace the confab groups, but there are a couple of things that we're growing that way. So if that's of interest to you, please just hit me up. Let me know. We'll put you on the list as we launch those, probably in February. Our hope is to get 3, maybe 4 core groups going, and see if we can't find some of that enterprise growth. So you'll hear us talking about a little bit more this year at RevThink, growth and enterprise, and kind of like having just 2 different sets of offerings, things that are growth oriented and things that are enterprise value oriented, and creating some structure on that. So keep your eyes open for that. Besides that, love you all. Happy New Year to you. Great to see your faces. Hope you're well. I'm in Los Angeles. We're going to do a Los Angeles dinner in early February. We're going to do a San Francisco dinner in early February. And I'm going to be in New York in 2 weeks. So we'll be doing a New York dinner. So also kind of like, we'll post that in community. If you want to be part of that, please come join us. Phil, maybe we can get you to come down from Montreal to New York. Come on, it's 2 weeks from now. You can get that motorcycle fired up and ride it through the cold and get it down to New York City.
I don't know about the bike, but I'm super interested. If it would be summertime, I'd do it 100%.
Well,
otherwise we can chat.
We'll put you out. We'll put your name out there so that we'll see if we can actually get you to meet you face to face sometime. That's my goal this year, Phil, is to meet you face to face somewhere.
I'd love that.
Me too, man. And Dave, you too. I'd love to get down under. I'm really 5 years of effort. I probably need to follow through on this thing at one point. All right, I love you all.
It's a slightly longer flight than Montreal to New York.
It sure
slightly
is.
Longer.
Yeah, it sure is. I get invited a couple times by Matt to do some things. So the timing is often hard because of the reverse seasons of us. But Happy New Year to you all. Hope you're doing well, and we'll see you guys next week if not sooner. All right. Have a good one. Later.
Yes.